At Hood de Vries, Mr. Nevinson had lived through a horrible experience. He told me about it. Jessie asked me why I was staring at the door after the flute stopped. She's a rather excitable girl, so I had to prevaricate. But you can take it from me, Milton, that I actually saw him. Saw him? Saw whom? I asked him. I have no idea who it was, but I know without the slightest doubt that I saw a hazy human figure hovering near the veranda door, the front door, just inside the room. I tried to look at it directly, but every time I did so, it shifted to the corner of my eye. There was something indescribably evil about it. He grunted and continued, I'm no alarmist, Milton, but I have a strong feeling we're up against something horrible. In fact, I think I can understand how that buckwoman Matilda met her death. What do you mean, sir? I asked him. He took his pipe from his mouth and said, When I gripped your arm, I did so because I had the most overpowering desire to follow that spectral figure outside into the darkness. I had to grip you. After a while it began to move. I saw it gradually shifting outside, and I wanted to follow it. Within those few seconds it became an obsession. It took all my will to resist, and it may sound a sensational thing to say, but I knew without doubt that it was calling me to my death. What Mr. Nevinson told me that day was a significant part of the story that I've come to call My Bones and My Flute. In a final analysis, it will be discovered that I am a person possessed of an innately morbid disposition, and I have no doubt that it is because of this, coupled with the circumstance that at the age of 19 I succeeded in ridding my scheme of thought of all my former religious fears relating to the perils of the hereafter, that the prospect of my own death does not terrify or even dismay me. My grandmother has had a bit to do with my outlook on death. In her lifetime, I was very fond of her in my own undemonstrative fashion. She was a lady with a generous heart and a rich imagination, though, unfortunately, this imagination had been misdirected. It had been given a fanatical religious bias, with the result that she had developed the ability to produce terror in small boys like myself, with her vivid and convincing word picture of what would happen to mankind on the day of judgment. This day, she would assure me, could come literally at any moment, yes, even this very night when I was asleep. We would all be lying in our beds, she might tell me, wrapped in slumber and not suspecting the slightest unusual event, when of a sudden the trumpet would sound above, and on awakening we would behold the blinding glory of heaven shining out of the sky. Night would become day, and angels would flock down upon the earth, and then— here she would bend toward me, her blue-grey eyes wide with a frenzied drama. Of a sudden again, a mother, or a brother, or a sister would vanish from our midst, and in that instant we would know that the Lord had lifted them into heaven as his chosen, because in this life they had obeyed his laws. Those of us who remained behind would look around us in fear and wonder. Why, would we ask ourselves, have we not gone with the others? And then the voice of an angel would thunder forth, saying, Ye that remain are the unrighteous, who will now be called upon to answer for your sins, before being cast into eternal flames with Satan and his black angels. To a small boy, This was an awesome prospect to envisage, but somehow it failed to instill into me all the terror it was intended to. And this is because I am fairly certain of it. The very fervour of my grandmother's religious sallies had paradoxically made me into an extremely priggish youngster, who believed without the slightest doubt that when that day arrived, he would, if only through his grandmother's saintly tutelage, be numbered among those of the righteous who would vanish from the earthly scene to be herded comfortably in that place of milk and honey high above. The psychological effect on me of these childhood influences has possibly contributed somewhat to my attitude towards annihilation in the general sense, and taken together with much more powerful inherited tendencies, has resulted in my viewing death in a distinctly favourable light. There is a strong vein of cynicism in me, which developed from an early age, and the longer I live and witness the foulness of mankind and the ineffectual blundering that smudges with defeat every human endeavour, the more I come to look upon death as an adventure, which should offer a pleasant solution to my earthly fumblings. With death in relation to other people, however, it is not the same. As though in compensation for this suicidal tendency, I contemplate the death of others with incredulity and horror, and an unreasoning compassion. In the Netherland of my ego-consciousness, I simply cannot conceive of anyone whom I can sense as an active, vociferous human creature being reduced to a condition of silence and clammy rigidity. To reflect for even a minute on such an occurrence not only makes me shudder with horror and wag my head with perplexity, but depresses me and brings tears of compassion to my eyes. This is the mood I had to resist when Mr. Nevinson and Jessie and I set out for Horstonland at 8:30 the following morning. From what had happened the night before, and from what Rayburn had told us concerning the fate of the Indian woman Matilda, I told myself that I could not disregard the possibility of imminent death. But instead of letting my mood become extroverted, I willed my thoughts to concentrate on the idea of death in relation to myself only. Accordingly, here in the boat now, I felt in no way tense and awed. If anything, the very intangibility of the threat heightened my sense of pleasurable anticipation. For at the best I had never been able to visualize myself dying in any but a conventional fashion, perhaps in bed from some dull illness concomitant with senility, or from a street accident. In heroic moments, it is true, I have seen myself falling in a battle with a bullet in my chest, but with the glamour of this would invariably fade when I reflected upon the depressing fact that millions of men have died like this. Hence, where was the distinction in my being added to their number? Where was the unique poetry in the event? Jessie had asked to be allowed to accompany us, and her father had agreed without argument. I could see that she was eager to be in our company, and later in the day, as it happened, she did admit that she had no desire to find herself alone when the flute made itself heard again. "Mother pokes fun at it, just because she can't hear it herself. If anything serious happened, she wouldn't be of the slightest help to me," Jessie said. Incidentally, Jessie was still in ignorance of Matilda's fate, and of the possibility of her experiences ending fatally. Watching her now, sitting beside me in the little craft, as the outboard motor spluttered harshly and sent a trail of foam through the black water in her wake, I felt a distinct tenderness towards her. She looked so furtive and frightened, despite the air of light-hearted indifference she tried to assume. Somehow I could not despise her because of the ineffectual traits of character she revealed. And in any case, provided she is not a complete moron, a woman who is ineffectual rather appeals to me. Something elemental in my make-up prefers that in moments of crisis the female should show signs of irresponsibility and be dependent on the male. Nothing annoys and repulses me more than a too capable and self-possessed woman. The morning was pleasant as only a February morning in the interior of British Guiana can be. The dawn mists, which had hovered in wreathing spills and tufts over the surface of the river, had dispersed, leaving the air fresh and tingling with the aroma of jungle blossoms and the vague musky dankness of water and rotted leaves. Seeds of the Eta palm drifted in the water, bobbing up and down, 3 parts submerged, shiny and dark purple in the bright sunshine, and looking like ornaments fit to be worn round a woman's neck. Close along the bank, under the mysterious shadows cast by the overhanging jungle, fallen mora blossoms like yellow dust floated in the tide, seeming not to move, yet moving. Horstenland, like Hoed de Vries, the site of another long-abandoned Dutch plantation, consists of jungle interspersed with occasional homesteads, small truly thatched lodges or benabs. The truly is a palm whose dried fronds are used for thatching roofs, each standing lonely and isolated in a clearing cultivated with plantains and bananas, cassavas and eddos, and other food crops. Like Jessie, Rayburn, who had come with us to handle the motor, was in ignorance of the real object of the excursion, for Mr. Nevinson was still reluctant to have the tale of our experiences spread around, and had cautioned both Jessie and myself not to discuss the affair within the hearing of anyone. Patwor's cottage did not differ greatly in appearance from the others dotted at intervals along the bank at Horstenland. As Rayburn pointed the bow of the boat towards it, we saw a grey unpainted wooden structure with the usual truly palm leaf roof. It was here that a conversation was to take place, a conversation that was most interesting, but it did not make us any happier. You'll hear it when I return to tell you more of
My bones and my flute.